The perpetual storm over the coastal town of Windhaven wasn't merely a meteorological phenomenon, it was a prison wall of churning cloud and lashing rain, a curse laid down a century ago after the townsfolk betrayed and drowned a coven of sea witches in the harbor. The old lighthouse, long abandoned, stood on a jagged promontory like a rotten bone, its lamp dead for 50 years. Yet, tonight, a single, feeble light flickered in its topmost gallery. Inside, illuminated by the guttering flame of a single storm lantern, Ilara pored over the waterlogged journal of her great-grandmother, the last keeper. The pages told of a bargain: the storm would be kept at bay so long as a keeper maintained a vigil of contrition, not with light, but with a specific, mournful song hummed each night at the tide's turn. The journal's final entry was a frantic scroll: the song is changing. It is learning the tune from me. I can hear it humming back from the deep. A particularly violent gust shook the tower, and the lantern flame dipped, elongating the shadows until they seemed to grasp at the walls. In that moment of near darkness, Ilara heard it, a low, discordant hum vibrating up through the stone floor, a perfect, horrible mimicry of the melody described in the journal. She slammed the book shut, her heart a frantic bud against her ribs, and the humming ceased as if severed. The silence that followed was worse, filled only by the rain's drumming and the distant, hungry crash of waves on the rocks below. Convinced it was a trick of the wind or her own frayed nerves, she decided to fulfill the vigil, to sing the proper song and perhaps break the town's curse. Standing before the grime-caked window facing the raging sea, she closed her eyes and began the low, ancient hum, its notes weaving a somber tapestry of apology and plea. For a minute, nothing happened. Then, the storm outside seemed to still, the rain softening to a whisper. A surge of wild hope filled her. But as she held the final, quivering note, a new sound arose, not from the sea, but from the spiral staircase behind her. It was the slow, wet sound of footsteps, ascending. Squelch. Drag. Squelch. Drag. They were heavy, leaving a glistening trail on the stone steps she could see from the corner of her eye, a trail that smelled of salt and deep-sea decay. Paralyzed, Ilara watched the reflection in the black window. A figure emerged into the lantern light behind her. It was shaped like a woman, but its skin was the pallid, water-swollen white of a corpse left in the deep, draped in rags of kelp and rotten netting. Salt water dripped from its hair, which floated as if still submerged. Its eyes were milk-white, yet they were fixed unerringly on her back. It did not move to attack. Instead, it opened its mouth, and from a throat that should not function, it began to hum. It was Ilara's song, note for note, but inverted. Where hers was a plea, this was a demand. Where hers held sorrow, this thrummed with ancient, cold fury. The hum filled the room, a physical pressure that made the lantern glass vibrate and Ilara's teeth ache. With each bar, the thing stepped closer, its waterlogged feet leaving perfect, briny prints on the floorboards. The storm outside returned with a vengeance, howling now in harmony with the creature's dreadful tune. The creature was close enough for Ilara to feel the chill radiating from its form, a cold that seeped into her bones. It raised a bloated hand, not to strike, but to gesture toward the journal on the table. The pages fluttered open on their own, past the final entry, to a blank leaf at the very back. There, as if written by an invisible, dripping quill, new words began to form in the same water-stained ink: the singer becomes the song. The keeper becomes the kept. The vigil is eternal. Understanding dawned, a horror far deeper than mere death. The vigil was not a duty to be performed, it was a trap, a parasitic ritual. Each keeper taught the melody to the entity, refining its mimicry, until it could perfectly replicate the singer's voice, their essence. The final step was not drowning, but replacement. The thing behind her wasn't just a monster, it was her great-grandmother, and the one before her, and the one before that, all absorbed, their voices now part of this choral abomination that maintained the storm from within the lighthouse, forever luring the next descendant to continue the cycle. Driven by a final, desperate instinct for self-preservation, Ilara spun around and threw the heavy storm lantern at the creature. It shattered against its chest, spraying oil and flame. The entity did not scream, it let out a guttural, bubbling hiss like steam escaping a vent, and for a second, its form seemed to waver, the hum faltering. Seizing the moment, Ilara bolted for the staircase, slipping on the wet steps in her terror. She half fell, half ran down the twisting stairs, the sound of the creature's hum reforming above her, now laced with a new, crackling note of anger. She burst out of the lighthouse door and into the fury of the storm, the wind and rain instantly soaking her to the skin. She risked one look back at the top gallery. The creature was there, outlined against the window, its milky eyes watching her flee, its humming mouth now carved into something resembling a smile. It had not given chase. It didn't need to. Ilara ran until she collapsed at the town's edge, gasping for breath. The townsfolk found her at dawn, babbling of witches and humming. They dismissed it as storm madness. But as the days passed, the change settled over Windhaven. The perpetual storm began to slowly, inexorably recede, revealing glimpses of a blue sky no living resident had ever seen. The people celebrated, believing the curse broken. Only Ilara felt the true, creeping dread. For on the second night, as she lay trembling in her childhood bed, she heard it again, the hum in her hum, but perfected. It wasn't coming from the lighthouse. It was a faint, pervasive vibration in the pipes, a resonance in the floorboards, a whisper on the sea breeze. The entity was no longer confined. It had learned the last keeper's song, and now it was free, its vigil diffused across the whole town. And Ilara knew, with a certainty that froze her soul, that the humming would never stop. It would simply wait, woven into the very fabric of the place, until she, or someone after her, was finally compelled to answer it with a new, living voice, beginning the cycle anew on a grand, terrible scale.